What is going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Today we're going to be talking about probably the most overlooked champion legendary in Raid Shadow Legends, Gurptuk Mossbeard. He did get a change, so it's probably why some people missed it, and I was kind of confused by this. I talked about him on my stream, I talked about him in my last YouTube video with Lydia the Death Siren, and people really don't know how good this champion is, and I can tell you that he's kind of one of the meta champions in Arena right now, and if you don't understand why, you are going to with this video. So really quickly, if you're not sure why he's so good, most of it is because of his A3 ability. Once booked, he has a 100% chance of placing block buffs on all enemies for 2 turns. Now, why is this so good? The first reason why this is so good is the fact that this cannot weak hit at all. Similar to Dracomorph, he doesn't actually hit the target, he simply places this on the target. So weak affinity, strong affinity, neutral affinity, it doesn't matter. This is going to land based on your resistance. Now, one of the things that people kind of overlook and say, okay, why is this good? Why is this considered meta? Every single champion in this game, moving on to every single arena team in this game, is going to have a counter. There's no team that has 0 counters in this game. It all comes down to the gear and the champions you choose to go against whatever team that you see in front of you. So with all of that being said, you have to take the champions that are currently in the meta to determine which champions are very strong. Now, Gurptuk Mossbeard is a direct counter to champions like Seeker that is very widely used, champions like Skullcrown, Sandlash Survivor, Valkyrie, any champion that provides the increased speed buff which we see everywhere from Lissandra, Golden Reaper, all the way to Apothecary. But as if that wasn't good enough, he does have one other bonus that makes him very, very strong. It comes down to his passive, Symbiotes. Now what this does is, this has the opportunity to increase the damage your team does, which would be your nuke champion in your arena team, by 30% damage. On top of that, you can take the mastery Stoke to Fury, which I'll show you right here on the screen. We have Stoke to Fury, increase the damage inflicted by 4% for each debuff, stacks up to 12%. So if you put this on your nuke champion, you don't have to worry about the heavy stress of building a ton of damage on your nuke champion to actually be able to one-shot the enemy team. So I'm a big fan of champions that not only have one benefit but have multi-benefits to a team like this. And the fact that Gurptuk Mossbeard has such a reliable and consistent block buff that he applies on everyone, on top of giving your entire team a boost for damage, taking stress off of that nuker like I just mentioned, and allowing you to build speed to make sure you're properly speed tuning your team. So this makes him actually huge and definitely game changing if you're not using him already. And I was talking on Twitch and some people said there's going to be a reaction of people saying he's not actually this good because he was regarded to be a very poor legendary, which he kind of was when he first came out, only to be used in Spider, and because of that people did not fuse him. So some people are just going to close their eyes and not want to hear this. However, this champion is actually extremely strong, and I'm going to show you a few examples in the arena of just what this champion can do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to try an arena team against someone like a Skullcrown. Skullcrown is probably one of the most common nuke champions in the entire game once you get to the gold arena, even silver arena on top of that. So the fact that her passive has an unkillable buff, I've seen teams and players struggle all the time where they push out their damage, they get counterattacked by Skullcrown, then she has that unkillable buff, so you're just cycling through your cooldowns, and then she finally gets a turn and she actually one-shots your team. What Gurptuk does in this position is he prevents that from ever happening. So as you can see, I am running Masteries as well as Gurptuk. You don't have to run both, I just chose to do it. If I wanted to, I can swap this out for a Ghostborn like this, and I can also provide my damage dealing champion, which is going to be Lydia, with an attack up. So let's take a look, see how this battle is going to go. I do have to keep in mind that Masteries is Void and Ghostborn is Spirit Affinity, so there is the chance to weak hit, however not with this team. So we're going to start here, push down the turn meter, provide myself with this increased speed buff. This is where Gurptuk really shines here. We have 2 negative affinity champions, which would have the weak hit potential. However, as mentioned, he's going to land it on everybody. So if Duchess tries to block debuff and put the Veil buff on the team, it's going to be denied. If Michaud fears the team and tries to put increased speed, that's going to be denied. Skullcrown's getting denied from her unkillable buff. And finally, Arbiter is not going to be able to place that increased attack on any of these champions. So now we're going to defense down all of these champions, also applying the attack up. And now we can use Lydia, Death Siren, to use her damage. As you can see, tons of damage also getting boosted by Gurptuk. And now a lot of people can say this is concerning, Duchess didn't die. This is one of the main reasons why I like to use Lydia as a damage dealer. Let's say Duchess cut in right here and she tried to revive everybody. That would be denied by Lydia, and she would get an extra turn using her hard-hitting skill, which is that single target A3, and she would completely one-shot this Duchess. As you can see there on top of things, support role champions such as Lissandra have very high damage thresholds. So the fact that I have close to 100% crit on top of the increased damage from Gurptuk Mossbeard is absolutely amazing synergy if she does get the ability to go a second time before their team can go. So another very common team to run Gurptuk against that has a direct counter to them is actually going to be any team with the Valkyrie. More and more people are struggling to speed tune their teams, so they're throwing in the Valkyrie, trying to offset the enemy team to make sure they cut in. What Gurptuk can do is she's going to allow Valkyrie to cut in, however she's going to deny the counterattack as well as the shield that can definitely be a nuisance to a lot of players that she actually does place. This is where you have to consider, is this Valkyrie going to be built well enough to actually cut in after Lissandra? Or is Gurptuk going to have a chance to go? This is where you have to weigh your options and kind of keep tabs on which teams you're hitting. If Valkyrie is in fact going to cut off someone like my Gurptuk Mossbeard, that's when I would throw Madame Saracen to strip the buffs, then have Gurptuk apply the block buffs to make sure someone like the enemy's Skullcrown isn't allowed to place that unkillable buff. However, I'm going to risk it for now. I'm going to use this Ghostborn instead of Madame Saracen. Let's see how we do. Alright, so what we're going to do first, as always, use that speed to our advantage. And now this is a situation where they do in fact have immunity sets on all of them. So this is probably something I should have picked up on, seeing as this team is very susceptible to a champion like Tormund. Had I planned this out, Madame Saracen would have gone instead of Ghostborn. She would have replaced all of this and I pretty much would have been fine. Since that is no longer the case, Valkyrie is in fact going to get that counterattack as we just saw there. So pretty much I'm doing damage control at this point, trying to make this as easy as possible for myself. So now let's use this A2 to try and get some kills off. We did end up killing 2, as we can see. We do have the unkillable buff on them. We did block the revive attempt, giving us a second turn to try and take out this Valkyrie, which is definitely going to be quite easy here. Now that Lydia is rather close to dying, we can give her a heal and see if we actually have enough damage here. We might actually get counterattack to death, which was my initial point on this. So it looks like we are actually going to suffer from what we were worried about initially in the beginning here. And now that we know this is going to happen, I can redo this team, throw in a Madame Saracen here. And this is all about learning from your mistakes. Now that we know the immunity sets there, we can simply go back and use Madame Saracen to make this work. Alright, so now that we have this settled, we have our Madame Saracen here. Let's take this for another spin and see how we can actually do against this team now that we were able to adapt to the immunity set on these champions. So we're going to start off with pushing down the turn meter here. And one thing to keep in mind is you have to make sure your speeds are very tight if using a Madame Saracen and Gurptuk together, because Valkyrie is always going to be itching to cut in. So now we place this block buffs and we actually managed to have our Lydia go. If Lydia didn't go, we would be able to see the wasted use of the counterattack here. And this is pretty much game set match now. Easy one shot on all of them with denying that revive passive. So once again, it's very hard to anticipate who's going to have an immunity set, who is not going to have an immunity set. However, if you have Gurptuk, if you were thinking he's a vault champion, I highly recommend you build him. Try to get that A3 book. The other books don't really matter as far as the A1 and the A2 go. It's all quality of life. The A3 for 100% chance is the main point here, and this is going to help a lot of players who are really struggling to get their nukers able to one-shot the enemy team, especially if they're not using someone like Lydia, who can block the revive attempt, get a second turn, and be able to finish off any reviver that actually survived. As far as masteries for someone like Gurptuk Mossbeard, unfortunately I don't have the ideal masteries on him. The masteries I'm showing you here for my Masteries is definitely what I would recommend for someone like a Gurptuk. And if you wanted to know how to build a damage dealing champion with someone like Gurptuk, I'm going to show you the masteries shortly. And as mentioned before, even though I'm not running it here, if you want to get maximum damage out of your damage dealing champions with Gurptuk's passive on top of the mastery synergy, you definitely want to run Stoke to Fury. As you can see, I'm not using it on my Lydia at the moment, so I'm not getting as much value as I possibly can, which means she can definitely hit a lot harder. However, that's what I would recommend. And it's almost required if you're going to use Gurptuk in your team, because why not get free damage if you actually can? As far as Gurptuk Mossbeard and other aspects of the game, he can definitely be good. You do have to keep an eye out and watch for any dungeons you would be struggling with where you would want to use this champion. While he does increase the damage that your team does, you have to remember that dungeons are a stage by stage event, whereas arena is usually go first, one shot your enemy, and try not to have it last more than 2 turns. So the fact that in dungeons you're going to have multiple turns, you're going to be taking some damage from the poisons that Gurptuk is applying to your team, so you have to keep that in mind and kind of balance all of your options in that sense, which means definitely run a healer if you want to use them in dungeons, and you have to make sure the dungeon actually makes sense to use Gurptuk in. Something like a spider to increase the damage of Royal Guards and Septimus, that's a very old strategy and he is very good at that, and he always has been good at that. Using him in something like Dragon Progression if you needed to prevent any speed increase buff from Apothecary to make sure your team's getting as many turns as possible. Also using him in Faction Wars, he is very strong against the Faction War wave that has multiple Valkyries. As you can probably imagine, placing that block buff, he's removing all of the shields and all of the counterattacks the Valkyrie is going to put on that wave, so he's definitely a huge key for any situation like that. Alright guys, that is going to be it for my video today. Let me know what you guys think. Are you guys going to bring Gurptuk out? As mentioned before, he currently is countering most of the meta champions in the arena right now. Granted, you can go first, and if you wanted to make a go second team, he probably wouldn't be as good. However, it's a very hard strategy to kind of replicate as far as going second, and it's more common to have your team speed tuned, make sure they go first. If that is the case for you, Gurptuk Mossbeard is definitely going to be that missing key for your team, and I can't stress enough how important it is that he buffs the damage of your nukers. It really gives you an edge over your opponent and really lets you focus on making sure your damage dealing champion has enough speed to actually get a turn and not get cut off. As always guys, thanks a bunch for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like button, turn on the notification bell so you're notified when my next video comes out, and I will see you all in my next upload.